Hey everyone. Hello, hello, hello. It is Wendy here again with Raise the Vibe Initiative. And to all of you returning today, thank you so much. I absolutely love this community and everything you guys are doing in it to raise the collective vibration. I am incredibly excited. I've got an amazing guest to bring to you guys all today. But before I go ahead and introduce Cam, hi Cam, I just wanted to do a disclaimer. We're going to be diving into some interesting stuff today, and today's entitled podcast is Exiting the Matrix, but we are going to be diving into some different topics. So, in this video, I just want everybody to know that this is for entertainment purposes only. Everything spoken about in this video is based on opinion from years of research, intuition, and logic. In the beginning of everyone's awakening, typically it is a bit rough. It is, a pushing aside of cognitive dissonance. So you may hear some things today that, may be the first time you've heard them. There's a fear that can happen in order to accept a different reality. So we just want to open up our eyes to just a different perspective today. We all have to first go through the learning about the truth in order to be able to find a way out. So as we focus on the collective ascension of humanity, I assure you today's podcast will be an ascending upward spiral. So I just wanted to introduce, I've got a great friend of mine on with me today, Cam Herndon. Cam is the head of ET Contact CE5 in San Diego, California. He is the research guy. He just knows so much about so many things, and this is going to be an amazing deep dive. He's been doing some deep research into the Matrix since 2006. And he also learned about the 100 monkey effect, which is something we're also going to dive into today, and free energy technology in 2008. So buckle up, guys. This is going to be a good one. Cam, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate having you here on Raise a Vibe.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Oh, yeah. Well, I see your stuff and I just love it. I love that you're very bravely putting things out into the world for people to look at and to think about. And I think that's a really important thing right now is to be truthful and, just to be brave. And you certainly are that. So, there's so many things that I would love to dive into today with you, but I think the first thing, and being here at Raise the Vibe, we talk a lot about consciousness, and I'm sort of curious what your thoughts are, on consciousness, like the collective consciousness. What are we dealing with in, I call it the old paradigm or the old system, the 3D matrix? What are
Mhm.
we dealing with in terms of a collective consciousness there? Is there a dynamic? Talk to us about kind of what's happening currently.
Well, there certainly is a dynamic, the collective consciousness. We're talking about our species as human beings. And we as a species collectively, and I'll get into this maybe a little later too, but we as a collective manifest somewhat of this reality. Okay, so starting off with, there was the Word, and the Word was God. And what does that mean? And so to me, that means they're talking about sound vibration. So everything that eventually becomes matter, becomes material, started off with a thought, and then that thought turned into a vibration, a frequency. Nikola Tesla said, if you want to find answers to the universe, you think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And so this is where consciousness comes in, because consciousness is actually before matter. Now, there's going to be scientists out there that will say, no, they don't believe that's the case. They think that it's first matter that just came out of wherever from some big bang, and just everything was just kind of by accident. And then eventually things evolved. and then we grew brains, and then within the brain we have these thoughts, and that's what we call consciousness, and that's not the case at all. So the way that I see consciousness, and I've been looking at this a lot with because so many people are dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia these days. And so the easiest way for me to explain this to people, especially in my CE5 group, I have quite a few people who are engineers, and there's people at MUFON. MUFON is Mutual UFO Network, and a lot of people know about that. It's nationwide and maybe even worldwide. And so I also speak at MUFON as well. And I was just talking to MUFON a couple Sundays ago, and we were talking about this because there's quite a few engineers, and they wanted to talk about consciousness. I said the best way that I can describe it is that our phones, typically we put videos on our phones, but we can't store everything on our phones. So we have what we call the cloud. So
Right.
think of consciousness as this place somewhere else, the cloud. And our brains are receivers that send back to and forth to the cloud this information. And then in the cloud, we have an individual file. So you have your file, I have my file, and that's where our memories are stored and so forth. And so then we'll get into eventually the 100th monkey tipping point part of it. And I'll talk about how the collective consciousness as a whole, comes into play there. But this cloud is, a lot of people call that place the source. They call it God. They call it heaven. Um, but the Tibetans call it the astral planes. And there's some people you talk to, they say there's 7 astral planes. And then there's in a book called Astral Voyages that I read, there are also talked about 11 astral planes that are these other planes above the 7 that are typically spoken of. And I'll talk about that when I talk about my out-of-body experience, because I went somewhere and I was trying to figure out for years what happened during that experience. And I finally found the answer in that book, in Astral Voyages. Um, so so consciousness is outside of us, and our brain works as a receiver to send the information and get back information. One of the things that's really cool, getting to the dementia thing I was talking about, is that if your brain has heavy metals in it, and they've done tests on people who had dementia and so forth, and they found all this heavy metal in the brain of people who had that. And so if you think of it like a receiver, like an old TV antenna, you and I are old enough to maybe understand that. But if or maybe no, just me. But that if you have some type of issue with the signal, then you move the antenna around, and then the signal gets in and comes better. It's like a radio, a dial, and you're tuning in. And then once you tune back in, so that's why some days that someone with dementia may have a really good day, and they have tons of memory, and say, "Oh yeah, Bob, my son, I remember you today." But the next day they don't, and maybe it's that heavy metal that got shifted in the brain for some reason or something, and their receiver's working much better that day, and the next day it's not. So that would be the explanation of that, that this memory is stored in the cloud, and that's where all the information that ever was, ever will be, is stored in the cloud, in that consciousness, in that one singularity at source. And a lot of people call it the Akashic record. You've heard of that probably from Tibetan monks, calling it the Akashic record. And I believe they say that it's on the 4th astral plane of those first 7. And Tibetan monks have been able to meditate to a level, of course, every single day for hours a day, to where they can actually go into the Akashic record, and they can gather information, almost like going to a library, and then coming back with this information. So this gets into savants. This is a very neat part of this. Savants. So somebody hits their head really hard. This has happened to pro baseball players and so forth. And actually, I got to turn this on. I forgot. Um, and then all of a sudden, they can play the piano like nobody ever has played the piano before, and they've never played it before, or they know a language, that's some ancient language, like Aramaic or what have you, that they never even heard of before or studied before, and all of a sudden they know it, perfectly. And so these are examples of what I believe happened, is that when they got hit on the head, their receiver all of a sudden was able to then get into another folder in the Akashic record and access this other information that was outside of their folder, obviously, right? Um, so yeah, so in layman's terms, that's probably the easiest way that I can help people to understand. Going back with consciousness, going back to the very beginning, it starts with thought, and then it goes into emotion, and then it goes into words, which is your sound vibration, or vocal cords create vibration. Um, and then that transitions into a manifestation, of course, of actual reality, something that moves from, if you go into quantum mechanics, which I studied for years before I got into meditation, and I'll talk about how I got into meditation, which was kind of interesting because I was being really nerdy, getting into the quantum mechanics and stuff, and then I found meditation because I was looking up stuff like free energy, and that's how I found out about CE5 actually at the same time. And so, oh my gosh, and um, so we'll get into manifestation, and when you're using meditation and yoga and things like that in order to try to manifest things for yourself, as well as a collective with multiple people, lots of people, if you can, manifest something for humanity, something better for humanity. And I'd love to get into that as well, because that's a big goal of mine as well.
Absolutely. Wow, there's a lot to unpack in that. And wow, I love that. So, I guess it's my idea that there is a certain amount of people that have awakened right now on the planet. When we talk about awakening, I would say we can sort of see that there's been a veil that's been put, in front of us that maybe has not been the truth, and we start finding out, a different truth. Um, Obviously, we are still facing a lot of these dynamics, in on the planet, let's say, various countries and government and whatever. Um, what do you think around that? Because obviously, I study the law of one. I'm sort of
Okay.
looking at, you know, maybe that's even your 100 monkey effect, right? Like as long as we're sort of 51% to others, service to others, now we're kind of leading in a more productive path once, let's say, humanity's consciousness can be at a 51% service to others ratio. We have an impact of really creating a very different planet altogether, in terms of
Right.
consciousness. But I believe that, the majority of the consciousness has been hijacked on the planet for so long. What do you think about that? Where do you think we are in all of that? Yeah, what's going on there?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking. Yeah, so there is definitely a war on human consciousness, if you want to put it that way, and there has been, kind of since inception, I think. So once people found out, certain, group of people found out that if you control collective human consciousness, then you can control the future. And it's not just that you can kind of steer them in a certain way. Of course, you can do that, but it's actually manifesting the reality that they want. And so there's a reason why there's just a few people who want control of everything and have had control of a lot of things that are information related. So, because everything that bombards us, whether nowadays we have from so many different angles, of course, right? But if we want to go back in time, before the internet, before TV, before radio, um, then you had, of course, and before books even, so you had religion. So religious dogma, and I'm not saying that it's bad or good or anything like that. A lot of it was hijacked, and because it's a really good tool, if you want to get in front of a lot of people a huge percentage of humanity on Earth. Um, and then you're able to change things. Obviously, the Bible's been rewritten many, many times. Other holy books have been rewritten. They took out a lot of really good stuff. So you have the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found, and it's like, wait a minute, what's this? You have all these, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. You have all these ancient scriptures and writings, and then they come across, some type of Tibetan church or something that was underground, and it was hidden for thousands of years, and it has, 70,000 scrolls, and it's all different information that we've been receiving. And so there's been a lot of control of information from all aspects. And then, of course, as technology increased, then you had the printing press, and so they started doing books, and so then they could put things in books, because again, if it's in writing, okay, then it gets into the thought, it gets into the mind, and then a lot of times they're repeating it back. So they have them come to a church, and then they have them doing, chanting and reading scripture, and so now they're putting it out there, they're putting it in the unified field with that vibration like I spoke about before, and repeating it over and over and over again. And so some people, depends on who you talk to, certain scientists and so forth, as far as the subconscious versus the conscious. So some people say the subconscious is 90%, the conscious is 10. Some say it's 95 versus 5, but it's a massive amount in the subconscious, and the conscious is really a small amount. And so the subconscious, the way that it thinks is that it can't differentiate on lies or truth. It can't differentiate on sarcasm or anything like that. Whatever it receives, it thinks it's real. And so people who understand that can utilize that. So when we have technology, especially once we get to the television, first, before that, it was radio. And before that was newspapers. And before that, it was books, like I said. So um, if you want to control the information, you want to control the minds of the collective, and steer them in that direction, so that you can manifest the future that you want instead of the future that's best for them, then you're going to take over those things that are those informational types of tools. And so it's said that the Rothschilds in the 1800s bought up Reuters and Associated Press. So basically bought up all the press so they can control it, bought up all the publishing houses so they can control it, control the information. John D. Rockefeller said, that's not good enough. I want obedient workers. The best way is now I'm going to create public school system. And so John D. Rockefeller created a public school system to then take away critical thinking, to remove our objective critical thinking, which is very, very dangerous. And that's what we see now. I'm going to move, into also getting into politics, and I'm not going to get too much into that because that could be very, boring and so forth. But it's something that's very, very huge and a part of us, especially today. It's become a part of our daily lives. Most people didn't care anything about politics, 10, 20 years ago. And then now it's all over the place. It's everywhere on the news every time you look at it. So and it's kind of interesting that I guess there's a debate between what I think are two puppets tonight. So it just so happens. But so they control that too, and that's my belief with the experience and the research and everything that I've done, of course. And I always tell people to go and do their own research and go be an objective critical thinker. Don't just do what anybody tells you what to do. And but that's been, part of the issue is that there was a scientist slash psychologist who um, did some studies and said that he felt that 80% of the people cannot be leaders. They can't really think for themselves. They don't have the capability, that they must follow, and they must just, listen and just do what people tell them to do. I think that that's a certain level of ascension, a certain level of like frequency and once you awaken, you can get past that. So I don't think that that's just like, that's the way it is. And it's always going to be like that at all. Because I don't think anybody's really, let's say, special. I think that some people have just been raised a certain way, or um, they had something happen in their lives where they awakened maybe before somebody else. But everybody's capable of it, is what I'm saying. And so, but in order to be able to awaken and exit the matrix, you have to understand what the matrix is. And so, in order to understand what the matrix is, we need to actually dive into some of these things that are not super fun to dive into, and they can be a bit uncomfortable. Um, so with politics, you have they only give you two choices, really. Oh yeah, some people say they're libertarians or something, but when it comes to the actual election, they never allow anybody else to get even 5% of the vote. So they give you these two choices. So it's just this theme where you have two football teams, and that goes back to the Roman Colosseum, bread and circus. When people started questioning what was going on in the Senate and what they were doing, and they say, okay, let's give them bread and circuses. Let's send them to the circus. Let's send them to the Colosseum, build these Colosseums, and let's have them go and have fun, and then distract them. And that's the same thing they do with football and baseball and all these sports nowadays, because it doesn't really mean anything in the real world. And if you spend a lot of time on that, and I understand it, and we all like entertainment, and so I'm not trying to knock that too much, um, but there are things that are so important in order for us to ascend human consciousness. And in order to do that, we have to understand that there are people that are controlling all this information, and we have to figure out a way to walk away from it, because they want you to work within the system. So they want you to believe that elections are not rigged. They want you to believe that okay, Bush was the guy, let's say, and I'm nonpartisan. I'm way outside of that. Okay, I've walked away from that a long time ago. But back when Bush, Bush is going to be a great president. Some people thought, of course, and by that time, all the decades, they had practically half of the country on one side and half on the other, which is a perfect division. And then, of course, Bush 9/11 happened. He created a bunch of wars in the Middle East. We weren't even supposed to go to Iraq. It had nothing to do with 9/11, all that. Oh my gosh. Okay, we have to get him out. Well, here's Obama. He's a brilliant speaker. He's a good-looking guy. All this, and he was very charismatic, and so he's going to be great. The rhetoric was amazing. Well, he gets in, and then he's not as good as we thought. Well, and then the country kind of sways towards, now there's Trump, he's going to be different, he's not a part of them, and all this kind of stuff, even though he was $3 billion in debt in the late 1980s, and it was bought by an associate of the Rothschilds. So they bought his $3 billion in debt. So anyway, so they put these two puppets that are controlled by the same people, so two wings of the same evil bird. You might have heard of that before. And so that what they do is they get the people just programmed into this program. So you've seen it now, unfortunately, on the right, these people are super programmed in that direction. And then, there's people are programmed in the opposite direction. And are they really thinking for themselves? And in order to have an awakening and really ascend human consciousness, we have to think for ourselves. To me, there's absolutely nothing more important in this world than awakening and ascending human consciousness collectively. There's nothing more important than that. It's all a battle over the mind. And getting back to the whole consciousness thing, you think about it this way, is that we hear about oneness, we hear about source, um, and I believe this, a lot of people say this, that there is just one consciousness in the universe. Okay, Erwin Schrodinger, when I was into quantum mechanics, Erwin Schrodinger was a quantum physicist, and he said the number of minds in the universe is one. I should put one finger up. um, and I didn't understand what that meant until I found out about Dr. Stephen Greer, and I found out about meditation and the science of consciousness. and then I got it. And Dr. Greer, I have to give him this. He explained it in a very beautiful way, that we are just waves on top of the ocean, but waves are part of the ocean, are they not? Right? And so we are the ocean. We are this one singular consciousness. However, we are temporarily having a subjective experience with amnesia. And then I'll get into why is that, and we'll probably, I can get into that a little bit later. I want to circle back to make sure I don't get off track. Um, with all of these divisive methods that they do, it goes back to the old divide and conquer, right?
Yeah.
And so they put us into not only these separate boxes, and they make us point at each other. I don't like that person. I don't like that person. Meanwhile, the people that are at the top of the pyramid, they're running everything. We really need to be paying attention to them, what they're doing, and we really need to all unite as one, and then try to flip this whole pyramid upside down, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, that's what we need to do. And so we need to be able to learn to figure out exactly what they're trying to do with our consciousness, start to objectively critically think, so that we can then actually walk away and exit the matrix.
It's funny because they it's distractions everywhere. Really, it's just
Absolutely.
distraction, and they go for your emotional energy. So if you're giving it,
Oh, absolutely.
if you don't like him, well, they're super happy about that. you know, now
Right.
you've got your emotional energy and they've got your distraction. It's quite funny.
Absolutely.
Um, and it really is. It's like the black and white checkerboard, and nobody ever wins. I think, really the only answer is just to get off the checkerboard entirely.
Absolutely.
It's like we're one humanity. I don't know why that seems so challenging for people to kind of get their head around, but when you come off and realize, like, we're one humanity. We don't have to fight each other. If we
Right.
were to come into that unity, the planet would change almost instantaneously as
It
a part
would.
of the sisterhood of man, right? So
Absolutely it would.
it,
Yes.
again, yeah, it just comes down to distraction for me. And I just see it everywhere. That's why I guess I just am. I try to stay quite mindful in terms of the information now that I'm taking in, and you know,
Well,
yeah,
that's very smart. It's because we can't underestimate the power of their programming.
yeah,
And so you mentioned something that was very poignant, as using fear, using emotion. And so what fear does, okay, so we're 98, depending on who you talk to, 98 to 98.7% matching ape DNA, monkey DNA, right? And then the rest they claim is junk DNA. And that's a whole nother conversation. I think it's actually Anunnaki DNA, because I think we're actually made by some other types of very high intelligent beings. But I digress. So because of the fact that we are so close in nature to apes and so forth, there's the seven chakras in our body. The lowest chakra is the lowest frequency chakra, which is the root chakra. Okay, that's in our sacrum, right? So that's where the sex comes from, and it's also where all the fear comes from, the survival instincts. So the fight or flight response, that comes from our root chakra, right? And so part of the goal, and this will get into, of course, the Masonic involvement. And you mentioned the black and white checker floor, and so part of their goal is to keep us in that root chakra, to keep us kind of almost in a fight or flight mode, in that very survival type mode, because we're so easily manipulated when we're in a fight or flight fear mode. And did you not feel it during COVID? I mean, I think everybody, you look at all these people, they're so in fear, and it's very debilitating, because when we're in a fight or flight mode, biologically, actually it turns off our immune system. So they were doing the worst possible thing that they could do, was fear, fear, fear. Now it was done on purpose, of course, but that's the worst possible thing you can do to people when there's something. Let's just say there's something going around. Of course, there's all kinds of talk about what it was and what it wasn't or whatever. There's the most scientific evidence is that it was, created in a lab and so forth. But um, let's just go with the fear of it. They're pumping all this fear, and if there's this virus that could be deadly going around, that's the worst thing you can do because you're turning off your immune system. And they were trying to keep us, from going to the gym and from kids playing on the playground and going outside and going to the beach. I couldn't even surf. I couldn't believe that. I mean, I actually got caught a few times because I had to sneak out. I thought this is just ridiculous. But anyway, so that was a huge example, and it backfired. It really, really backfired for them. It was a massive awakening. So I'm not going to say the word, that whole thing that happened in 2020 and so forth created a massive awakening. And so that there we have these stepping stones of ascension of consciousness that happens now and then where something just explodes this awakening of consciousness. And that was one of them. So it's horrific and terrible, and so many bad things happened because of it. But there was also a big awakening because of it. And so now I think they're trying to get a lid on it, and the genie's getting out of the bottle. They're trying to put it back in the bottle, and so they're ramping it up. They're ramping the fear campaign. They tried, with other type of strains. Now bird flu. Now war, of course. All this war going on, but more and more people are awakening, and more people are shutting off the news. More and more people are they're going, people have different opinions about different types of podcasts. So I was going to say Joe Rogan, and some people don't like, Joe or whatever, but he has 11 million people sometimes watch his show. Okay. So he has a massive influence, let's just say. And they're talking about amazing things. If you don't look at the little soundbite stuff and you actually watch some of the videos of some of the amazing people, of course, yeah, he has some, people on there that talk about sports and this and that, but there's some real gems, and there's no editing, which is beautiful. That's what I love about that type of stuff. And so people are watching this and they're listening to Graham Hancock, and they're learning about ancient apocalypse, and that maybe we had multiple cycles, and this is just another cycle of consciousness that's now ascending again. They've been trying to hide that we had all this amazing technology, or we or some other people on this planet had amazing technology, and then there was a flood, right? Well, what about before that? And then before that, and going back and so forth and so on. And maybe these cycles are either 12,000 years or every 24,000 years. And it's really, really cool that people are awakening to this type of information. And so people are pulling away more and more, I think, from this fear. It doesn't feel good. Eventually it's gotten so out of hand that they're actually pushing people away from them, which is great for the movement. It's great for the awakening consciousness movement. But I think people need to take away from this that if you can, try to understand that these things are anything that has to do, for the most part, with government, mainstream media, um, anything that's really mainstream, influencers, celebrities, Hollywood, actors. You see these people saying the same things because they're controlled, because they signed a contract, and by these same people, which gets into the Masonic, it gets into the Jesuits, and these people have been, trying to lead us down this path of like towards a dystopia. And to me, it's not going to happen. To me, they're making huge mistakes along the way, and they're actually creating the Great Awakening. I believe that the Great Awakening of human consciousness cannot be stopped at this point at all. There's nothing that can stop it. And like I said, the genie's out of the bottle. And so what I try to do is to try to help it speed it up. I want it to happen yesterday. So I put a lot of stuff out there, and I've lost a lot of money in my business, and it's okay, because I still can live well enough to, feed my 3 kids and, get them, to have a good life. And I worked my way around figuring things out. When you don't have fear, when you really get rid of a lot of the fear, then things really start flowing for you. And things become a lot easier actually without that. And you're able to really focus. And especially when you're meditating like I do every day, and you work on manifest meditation, adding binaural beats and adding positive affirmation stuff to it, which is from Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is absolutely amazing. Any of your viewers haven't heard that name, go research him. He's incredible. And he teaches you how to manifest what you want and even change things in your body, to heal yourself and all types of incredible things. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. It's funny when you bring that up. Um, I definitely believe this is an evolution of consciousness. I mean, I just see it everywhere exploding. And on the other side of that, I see desperation. It's like I look at some of these tactics and I'm like, it's almost comical.
Yeah.
Maybe not for some people, but I find it comical because it's kind of like, could you try any harder? Like, come on, guys, like this is just anyway. But yeah, I don't know, just the explosion I see happening, and I think it's just also becoming very apparent even in just the public eye. It's the mom at school with her son that I'm sitting beside at a soccer game was like, you know what? You know? Like people know what's going on. Like you think
Absolutely.
they're brushing things under the rug, and it's just becoming more and more apparent. So so that's really interesting. And yet we're sort of stuck in this place where I feel as though the old world has very much collapsed already. Even the old aspect of myself, the way that I looked at things 5 years ago or 10 years ago is very, very different than the way that I see things now. I've come very much into a present point of living. I'm living in presence presently, and enjoying the moment, and I'm off the TikTok clock, so to speak, in lots of ways. And
Mhm.
and I see that there are many solutions and ways that we could be doing things so much more effectively, in creating just a better world for everybody. I'm
Mm.
a visionary, I'm a dreamer, I suppose, but I feel like, it is very tangible for us now to be able to be doing some of these things. And I think people are tired of being in bondage. They understand that they've been there, and it's time we break out of that. We talk about the root chakra, and these lower chakras. To me, what that is also symbolic of is it's the ego, right? It's the
Oh,
ego, it's our
absolutely.
lower sort of mind, it's our lower dimension. And I think it's time that we come in as a humanity, as a one, into the heart, where we're able to start healing, we're able to start, forgiving, we're able to start envisioning a better place, for our children and for who's coming as well after us. And it really is our
Absolutely.
responsibility to do everything we can to create that world. So, on that, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? How can we start taking what we've learned and what we're seeing, and how can we transfer that into maybe creating something different? Think about that.
Well, first of all, we have to definitely start with consciousness ascension, as I mentioned. That's the most important thing. And that can lead up to the 100th monkey. So I could skip kind of forward, or if you want me to talk, I'll talk about that now. So the 100th monkey. So some people tried to claim, I mean, if you go on the internet and there's lots of things that actually are true, and there's all these, you'll see articles that say they debunk them and that they're not true, and that's them trying to put out disinformation and so forth. So anyway, what the 100th monkey is, some claim this never happened or what have you, but what it is that there were these islands that were in the South China Sea, and they had these macaw monkeys on them, and they were dropping sweet potatoes from airplanes onto these islands. And there are multiple islands, like I said. So the monkeys would pick up, eat the sweet potatoes, but eventually this little girl monkey decided to go over to a pool of water, fresh water, wash off the sweet potato, wash off the sand. And so she was eating the sweet potatoes without sand on them. And the mother finally noticed that she was doing this. And so she started doing it. And then monkey see, monkey do, the other monkeys started seeing them do it, and they started doing it. And so allegedly, when the 100th monkey, while they're doing this scientific experiment and they're being watched, when the 100th monkey did that, then all of a sudden, all the other monkeys on the island immediately, like that. I mean, sometimes it would take a few days, weeks, or whatever until another monkey would notice and do it and so forth. But now all of a sudden, immediately, all of them were doing it. But that's not the kicker. The really, really cool part about it is that on all the other islands, none of the monkeys knew about it, so they weren't doing it. As soon as that 100th monkey did it on that one island, all the monkeys on the other island started doing it. That's the 100th monkey tipping point. So within a species, so this is what we're talking about here is, and again, let's go back to what I said about 98 to 98.7% matching monkey DNA as humans, right? And so within a species, once you hit a certain percentage, now you mentioned 51%. Now they're talking that the 100th monkey tipping point could be extremely low, not 51, way below even 10% of the human population on Earth. So within that species, once we get to a certain percentage of awakening, then everybody on the planet will immediately have that knowledge and have that consciousness awareness and awaken to that. So it would be like the things that I've researched and that I know we're going to get into the technologies and disclosure of that and so forth that could completely change human civilization into a dream world that most people can't even comprehend or fathom at this point. Everybody would know that. Everybody would have that awareness. Now, here's the big thing that really gets me excited is that all the people that have all the secrets. So we're talking about people in Area 51, which is really called Groom Lake, S4. We're talking Nellis Air Force Base, all these underground facilities, Lockheed Skunk Works, okay, Boeing Phantom Works. Now this is Boeing, but this is the black part of Boeing. Most people haven't heard Phantom Works, like, oh, what's that? That's a part of Boeing that's actually it's gone dark. It's black. It's way beyond congressional oversight. They have at least $200 billion a year that gets funneled into these black projects. They're actually called USAPs, or Unacknowledged Special Access Projects. And so these projects are all over the world, but we're talking about America. At least, we're in America. Well, you're in Canada or America? Can't remember. Sorry.
Let's have.
We speak the same language, but so they're all over Canada too and so forth. But anyway, so the people that have these secrets, now that we talk about the Vatican, you can go on, right? And there's these catacombs in the Vatican with all of this stuff that they don't let anybody know about, right? What's down there. So the people that are holding all these secrets, all of a sudden they would awaken and they would say, oh my gosh, everybody needs to know this. We shouldn't keep the secret anymore. We can't. What were we doing? That was terrible. This is evil, or whatever you want to call it. And so all of that information all of a sudden becomes disclosed. And that would happen like that. And so once I learned about the 100th monkey, that's when everything changed for me, because I really realized that we have this ability to completely change human civilization. It was a combination. At the same time I was learning about Nikola Tesla and free energy technology, which is technology that pulls energy right from the atmosphere, right from the air. And you could be anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter that what weather is happening or anything like that. Solar panels need sun, wind needs wind. You just pull it directly from the atmosphere. So you could be in the middle of nowhere So let's talk about, well, we could get into the technology in a bit. I wanted to talk about how I found meditation in CE5 and my out-of-body experience, if that's possible.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's talk about it. Well, I'm here.
Okay. Oh, okay. So, real quick, I'll mention the reason that I started to really awaken was that I became a father. So in 2006, July 6, 2006, I became a father, and I was holding my daughter in my hands, and I realized that I didn't know that much about this world, that I felt selfish. I felt like, okay, everything was about me, everything was about making money and surfing and stuff like that. I wasn't a big reader, and I didn't care about politics. I didn't meditate for sure. Yeah, I wasn't religious, although I believed in a creator always. But um, and so starting that night, I started watching documentaries and reading books and listening to interviews as much as I could. I put my kids to bed early, of course, as I had eventually three children, but we'd always put them to bed at like 7 p.m. So I'd have 3 or 4 hours a night to watch documentaries and all this kind of stuff and read and so forth. And so I had to get through, the tough stuff, the history and the truth about a lot of stuff that's hard with the cognitive dissonance. But I found Nikola Tesla and about free energy, and he wanted to give the world free energy, without wires. I look at, driving around, I look at power wires and it's just ridiculous. We still have them in 2024. And back then, in the late 1800s, and the early 1900s, they could have given us free energy. So imagine a device, that you just have this little bitty box that you have at your house, and you can run the AC or the heat depending on the time of year as much as you want, and you have all the energy you could possibly want. You put it in a car and you can drive forever. There's no range anxiety like with an electric vehicle. You don't have to charge it. You don't have to charge batteries. You don't have to get the batteries out of the cobalt mines or any of that kind of stuff. Um, so I got so excited about all of this. And so I just was obsessed with free energy and wanting to figure out how to create a free energy device. And so I started talking to quantum physicists and so forth about that. And then um, that's when I found Dr. Stephen Greer. He had it was called the Orion Project. And he had that on his website. And I found out about it because he was trying to create a lab to create a free energy device, exactly what I wanted to do. I said, oh my God, here, wait a minute, what's all this other stuff he's involved in? What meditation, in science of consciousness, Vedic meditation? He's using meditation to contact extraterrestrials. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. This is amazing. And then it clicked when I really started learning about it. Going back to Schrodinger, it's like, I get it now. The number of minds in the universe is one. So he talks about the holographic universe, which is my favorite book by Michael Talbot. Anybody wants to read a really cool book, get the holographic universe by Michael Talbot. Um, and so he talks about that and everything, and it all made sense. It all came together. And I think that with this awakening, one thing I realized is that they've been trying to keep spirituality and science separate. And why is that? Because the answer lies with them together. You take science and spirituality and you put them together, and it all makes sense. And that's what they knew in ancient Egypt. And, you go back further and further in Sumeria and so forth, and both with the emerald tablets. And he talks about those types of things. And they had technology that's beyond our wildest dreams that seems like magic to us, right? And even the unacknowledged special access projects, they call some of the stuff basically magic because that's what it seems like, the technology. Um, so so then I was just obsessed with the Dr. Stephen Greer, and I started watching every single lecture I could get my hands on from him and everything about him and reading. I got his books and all that. And so I wanted to go on one of his retreats. He would do these retreats with about 30, 35 people, and they were to make contact with extraterrestrials. But he would also teach remote viewing and other types of meditation modalities and so forth, and talk about a lot of cool stuff too. So um, but there was a vision that I had. It was like almost like a voice in my head that came to me during a really deep meditation, because I got really good at meditation fairly quickly. Um, and by the way, the type of meditation I do, I taught myself. So I looked at all these different types of meditation and modalities. Most people want to sit in lotus position. I'm not knocking anything, because I think it's not a one size fits all. So what works for you, fantastic. Keep doing that. What may not work for this person. Okay, so maybe that person needs to try something else. I'm not into the ego of, oh, this is the way and the only way to do something. Absolutely not. We're all different, beings and so forth, and have different perspectives. So um, I can't sit lotus position very well. I don't want to blow out my knees. And I'm a surfer and I love surfing, and I don't want to wreck my body or anything like that. And it's not comfortable. And so I said, I want to get as deep as possible. I'm just going to lay down. So that's how I meditate laying down and get as comfortable as possible. Whatever works for you is great. And so I had this vision, and I was told that I needed to train very, very um, in a tough way with serious discipline, so that I would be ready to go on this retreat. So I needed to meditate for minimum of 90 minutes a day, hour and a half. And so I started doing that. And I got into the CE5 thing too, but I was doing it on my own. And that's how I kind of start to do things. I typically do them on my own. I've never been like a class person. There's nothing against that, because it depends on who you are. Some people love going to a class. They love that. And I've had, since then, I've gone to a breathwork class, which was one of the most amazing experiences I've had in my life, by the way. And everybody should try breathwork. So her name was Nastasha. She's in San Diego. She's incredible. But getting back to that, so it ended up for 5 years. I did over an hour and a half meditation every single day from 2010 to 2015. And I was told, in the original vision, that I was going to have this epiphany, and I would just know. I wasn't told what it was. And when I had this epiphany, it was that I was ready to surrender completely, that I was ready to go on this retreat, and I was going to meditate as much as I possibly could every single day, and take it as seriously as I possibly could. And whatever happens, happens. If I get taken off in a ship, I get taken off in a ship. If I don't come back, I don't come back. I had that type of surrender. And so what I ended up doing on the trip, which was interesting, because the first people I met on the trip were these multimillionaires, and all they did was brag about all the material things that they had. And I was very surprised that someone like that was going to a Dr. Greer retreat. And so there was people from all walks of life. They were kind of checking the box, so to speak. And then I was on the other side of the spectrum, and I thought it was kind of neat that we met at the airport. Oh, you're going to Dr. Greer's thing, and then we rode in the car together, and they just talked to me, and I was like, oh wow, okay. Um, yeah, well, I took a different approach. I've been meditating for an hour and a half or so every day for 5 years to get ready for this thing. And so I actually meditated for over 5 hours a day while I was at the retreat. And I didn't eat much. And I wasn't vegan at the time, but I was told that you raise your vibration. And I don't know if this is true or not, but I was told at the time you raise your vibration being plant-based. So I decided to be plant-based for the trip. And before the trip, getting ready for the trip, I took it very, very seriously. And so the third evening, every night we would do C5 under the stars. And it was beautiful setup. We were at the Hopi Native Reserve. It was just a retreat place, and there's nothing else around it. And it had this beautiful meadows and grass, and then it had a tree line that went out. And so I'm meditating over 5 hours a day. Later on, I found out when I talked to people the last day, they were like, "Oh, we've been going on tourist things during the day and all this stuff." And the third night, oh, by the way, I have to add that I would not text. I was I, I just got divorced a year before that, and I told my kid's mom and my kids, that I just won't you won't be able to reach me for almost a week, and it's just the way it is. So That way I could unplug from the matrix. And so I wouldn't have any of that stuff in my head at all. Um, and so the third evening before dinner, I was getting ready to do my longest meditation of the day. And so I set it up, I laid down, and I would get so good at meditation that I didn't know what time was during the meditation and stuff, so I wouldn't know how long I was actually meditating. And so I would write down what time I actually started the meditation, and that way I would know how long it actually was. And so I did that, and then what had happened is that I went into this vibratory state where all of a sudden I didn't try to do this, and I honestly didn't. I never studied out of body experiences or how to do it or anything prior to this at all. I just wanted to get really good at meditation and wanted to get at the point really quickly where you have no thought of mind. You have total silence and you get in that beautiful state of bliss. And then you start kind of having visions and stuff. But I'd never left my body before. I rose up out of my body and I'm up on the ceiling looking down at my body. Oh my God. And then next thing you know, I shot out the ceiling. And this place that I was staying in was an actual log cabin. I have pictures of it where there's like logs on the outside of it. It's really neat. This is in Colorado, by the way. Okay, so the Hopi Native Reserve, Colorado by Mesa Verde, if anybody knows that area. So Durango you fly into, and then you drive about an hour from there or so. And then I flew down to the meadow, and there's this square cement area where we had all our chairs where we would do C5 under the stars every night. And I flew right over that, flew right between the tree, went into the tree line, and I'm flying. And let me tell you, when you have an out of body experience, it's more real than this is real. Some people think, oh, it sounds like you're dreaming. No. First of all, you remember everything, everything. To this day, I remember everything like it just happened. And it's more vivid and real than this is right now. In fact, one of the cool things you have, because you don't have an avatar that you're using while you're doing this, your avatar is on the bed, you know. Um, I had binocular vision, so I was able to actually zoom into things really closely, and I was able to slow things down and like binocular vision. So I'm flying between the trees. Oh my God, I'm flying. And so I did this for a while. And what was interesting is that most astral projections, out of body experiences, I'm told, because I've researched a lot since then to try to figure out what happened to me, but is you're in control. Well, I was only in control for the flying. And then something was guiding me, or not even guiding me, but actually taking me and showing me after that. And so what happened at the end of the flying, I come through the trees, I'm going for a while through the trees, having a ball. And then I come back, and then all of a sudden, boom, I'm standing in the meadow. And I'm to the right of where this big cement area is with all the chairs. And I look over to that area, and then I'm told to look to my right. I look to my right, and I see this. It was a saucer shaped object, but it didn't look anything like anything you'd seen in the movies or anything. It looked like an emerald. It was green. It didn't have any bolts or anything like that. It was absolutely perfectly smooth. It looked like a jewel. And I'm just mesmerized, and the moonlight's glistening off of it. And I'm just looking at this, just my mind's blown, looking at how beautiful it is. And then next thing you know, I'm inside it. So something takes me inside this thing. And then I'm on one side of it, there was a column that went up in the middle of it from the top to the bottom of the floor. And then there was this, it almost looked like a desk, a round desk, kind of table that was around this cylinder that went up and down in the middle. And then I see this being on the other side, but its back was faced to me. And so Dr. Greer always told us, if you have a really special experience in a meditation and you are visited by some type of being, whether it's extraterrestrial, interdimensional, what have you, then sometimes they assign someone to you that you actually get to talk to. And so tell them your name and thank them for coming and all that. And so that's what I started to do. And then there was nothing said. All of a sudden, it started slowly moving to turn around to look at me. And then as it went sideways, I saw that it actually had a beak. And it kind of startled me because I thought it was maybe a human type being, but because, arms, legs, just like a human, of course, but it had a beak. And then it looks straight at me. And then there was this very serious voice, this deep voice, and I'd never experienced telepathy before. So it was very kind of strange how it was just this, it was like my head was a boombox, let's say, and I was my head because I was out of my body, but it was this very, very booming voice that said, "Let me show you." And then all of a sudden, I was outside of the saucer. I was standing in the same spot. I looked to the right, saucer is gone. I looked to my left, and there's this light of all the people that typically sit in those chairs turned into light. And then all of a sudden, it started spinning counterclockwise, this white light. And this white light kept spinning faster and faster. And then all of a sudden, it turned into this pyramid of light spinning counterclockwise super fast. And then all of a sudden a beam shot out the capstone of it out into space. And then all of a sudden I flew into the pyramid and then flew up the beam out into space. And so now I'm in space and I can't control any of this. So I'm just being taken for a ride.
Wow.
And then the voice comes back and he says he's Thoth. So he tells me he's Thoth and that he's going to show me this technology that I've been hoping exists. And so there's a technology that's beyond free energy. This technology is called atomic replication printing. Now, this is a type of technology that, imagine 3D printing without any material. You make the material come out of thin air from like the fourth dimension. So you could create anything you possibly want. It's like a Jetsons type thing, right? And so what I'm being shown, I get flown down to this planet I've never seen before, right? So some planet I get flown down, and then he's showing me that at first they look kind of like mushrooms. They were just all rounded off and they were growing really fast in front of me. They were gigantic. And then he told me, he said, this is atomic replication printing. These are buildings. But in the future, the buildings won't have right angles. Everything will be curved. Yeah. And so I'm shown this technology, and he says that this technology exists, that this technology will completely change human civilization because, what are we doing with these wars for the most part? What we are doing, the military industrial complex is stealing oil, stealing natural resources, stealing whatever, it is that they covet that country has, right? So whether it's oil, whether it's gas, whether it's cobalt or what have you, lithium, all those things. You don't need to do anything like that anymore. And you don't need to you don't need to dig, you don't need to kill the earth, you don't need to dig up and take out where animals live, all that stuff. We're going to get into all this, okay, in a bit. So my mind's blown. I don't go, okay, and so he has me fly up from this planet, and then I see this. I don't know what it is at first, and I'm getting closer to this thing, and it looks like it has all these colors. And what it was is the opening of a wormhole. And so I go inside this wormhole. I'm flying this wormhole, and again, it's this counterclockwise for whatever reason, spinning motion. And it's every single color that you possibly imagine and beyond any color that you've ever seen. And it's just spinning like this. And I'll tell you, I tried to find every single movie I could with a wormhole after this event happened. And Hollywood doesn't know what they're doing because there's nothing as beautiful or even close to as wonderful as what I experienced. And like I said, with the binocular vision, I could actually zoom in and get a close up and slow down, and I could see that each and every single color was a separate geometric shape that was spinning in this thing. So these are all, it was almost like an asteroid field of geometric shapes that were really, really small, kind of like pixelization, right? So like when you zoom in to your camera with, a screen, and you see the pixels get bigger and bigger. And so I could zoom way in to see what these actually were, the little geometric shapes, and they all were different colors. Absolutely gorgeous. And I'd zoom out and it would start spinning fast, and I'd be flying through again, fast again. And this happened for a while. And I have to say, while I'm in this part of it, is that I researched for years trying to figure out what happened, because I researched near death experiences after this and all that, and I couldn't come across anybody who has had an experience like this. And when I get to the end, that's when it really blew my mind. And one thing that's really cool about this part, going through the wormhole, is that what I found, and it just like, sometimes it just clicks. Things just like all of a sudden, like, why didn't I think of that before? Or it's just the way it is. You weren't ready, but when you're ready, you're ready. And all of a sudden it came to me, and they've only spoken about it that I could find, and this is called the Rainbow Bridge. You ever heard about crossing the Rainbow Bridge? Allegedly, dogs and animals do it, okay, when they pass over. And so I found out about this, and I was, oh my God, I'm like researching this, and it's like that's what it was. I was in the Rainbow Bridge. Um, but it's all about animals and dogs, and these psychics that get to talk to dogs as they pass over, and people have the money to pay the psychic to talk to the dog so they can get feedback. This is what they've said, is that they're going through this rainbow bridge as they're crossing over and all this. And there's a poem about it. And that's what I found. I was, oh my gosh, well, I couldn't find anything about humans, but there I was crossing this rainbow bridge. At the end, it opens up, and then as soon as I come out of this thing, then the most bizarre thing happened. All my memory of myself and everything I know just completely vanished. And I became one with everything, and everything became me. So I had no memory. It's totally wiped. Planet Earth, everything I know now, wiped. But I just knew I was the one. And there was this blue grid. And the only thing I've ever found that was close enough to this blue grid in any movie or anything that, seemed like maybe it was them slipping out some truth in Hollywood or whatever, was in the movie The Matrix, the third one, where he goes to the mainframe, the central mainframe computer, which is kind of um, like the singularity in that sense. In that movie, they talk about it. That's the singularity. That's the source. They call it the source mainframe. And so it's actually talking about the source. Like I became one with the source, and this blue grid, I could zoom into it like I could before, and it looked like liquid fire. It was alive, and it was me. I was it. But the most incredible thing is that the only feeling that I felt was pure love and bliss beyond all human comprehension. And I can't really describe it better than that. Um, and so I felt like I was there for hundreds of years. Time is just, it doesn't really exist. And so eventually this grid formed into a pyramid. So there's a lot of symbolism in this. So another pyramid forms. And in my peripheral, I go into the pyramid, and I am the pyramid. I am everything, right? And I become this pyramid, and then all of a sudden everything goes black. And then the weirdest feeling ever was me starting to remember who this guy Cam is again, and planet Earth, and where I came from, and all this starts coming back to me. And oh my God, I'm this. Wait a minute, I was everything, and now I'm this guy Cam, and and then a really strange feeling happened when I started feeling my body again. And then when I started feeling my body, I realized, oh, there's something wrong. Something happened. And what had happened actually is that I stopped breathing. So when I actually came back into my body and I opened my eyes, I was bouncing up and down on the bed. I was in convulsions. And so I was freaking out, trying to get my breath back. And then when my breath finally came back, then all of a sudden, all this electricity came into my body. I felt like I was being electrocuted. And so I'm laying on the bed and I feel like I'm being electrocuted, like there's electricity coming out my fingers and toes. And I'm, what is going on? I mean, I don't even have time to figure out what just happened, because now I feel like I'm being electrocuted, like I'm dying or something. And then that subsides. And then this strange feeling of all of a sudden my whole body felt like thousands of needles, prickly needles. And it was just like when you sleep on your arm and you cut off your circulation and then the blood goes back in your body and in your arm. It was like that happened to my entire body. So all of a sudden it was like the blood was coming back into my entire body. And I was paralyzed, and then I'm getting my feeling back in my body. I'm like, what is happening? And then it comes back, that subsides, and then the most amazing feeling I've ever felt in my life all of a sudden happened. Then all the love and bliss started rushing back into my body, and I couldn't stop laughing. So I'm just laughing, for who knows how long, 30 seconds, felt like forever, right? Um, and so I stopped laughing finally, and I'm like, oh my God, it's the most blissful I've ever felt in my life. And then I was just tripping, going, how long was I gone? What day is it? I was wondering what day, like, was I gone for a week? What happened? And I look at my phone and it was 51 minutes. And so it's the same day, it's 51 minutes. It's like, okay, wow. And then I was just trying to figure out what happened and I mean, how do you put that together, with that? And so my mind was just kind of blown. And the interesting thing is that when I actually started to get up, I was very off balance. I had not vertigo, but I had a very hard time walking. It was like I'm trying to kind of learn how to use my body again. Um, and what I found when I walked outside, because I finally was like, I guess I better go down and have dinner. I was late to dinner. And so I went outside, and this wonderful lady, Wendy, and she was sitting next to Dr. Greer on the whole event, and she was very special to him, but I didn't get to know her until this happened. And she happened to be in the room next to me, and I had no idea. And these were special rooms that were just above where the people who owned the this place actually were below. It was above them. And Dr. Greer was staying at a guest house out on the property. And then there were all these like it was like kind of Motel 6 or whatever along the side of this log cabin. I was in the log cabin part on the top, and then they're underneath. And then on this side underneath was it was a dining hall to eat, like a cafeteria. And she looks at me and she goes, "Did you just have an out of body experience?" Oh my God, how did you know? And I could barely talk because I hadn't tried to speak yet. And it's like I had a problem with my voice. I was whispering. It's like I couldn't get out anything more than a whisper. I said, "This is weird. My body's not working." And she said, "Oh my," I said, she said, "I just took one look at you." She said, "I've had out of body experiences and I've never seen anybody look like that before." And she said, "Well, be very, very careful. You go down the stairs, you could fall and hurt yourself." And it was just like the universe. Like she happened to walk out at that time. I didn't even know she was. It was a third night. I hadn't ran into her before up there, so I didn't know she was staying in the room next to me. And so anyway, the universe just had her there to kind of comfort me and make sure that I was careful. And so I go to have dinner and I by myself, and I didn't talk to anybody because I was just blown away what just had. Just it's a life-changing experience. And so that night at CE5, what Greer would do, about halfway through, about an hour and a half in, he would then say, okay, anybody want to share if they had any visions during meditation today? And I was like, I don't even know if I can speak. My voice is still kind of strange. And I was just going to wait and be the last one, maybe. And so, anyway, I eventually spoke. I waited till the last one. And it was so interesting because when I was done telling you what I just, telling them what I just told you, um, there's a thing that happens with CE5 sometimes. And Greer's talked about it and so forth, that when you're doing this meditation, that's a vectoring type meditation where you're vectoring in the extraterrestrials from wherever their destination is, and where they're living at that time, or wherever their spaceship is, or whatever, or dimension, through telepathy. It could be 100,000 light years away or whatever. And then when they sometimes show up, and sometimes their ship's cloaked or something, all of the insects and everything will stop, and it will be completely silent. It's a very strange thing when you're out in nature and all you hear is these loud insects and frogs and things like that, and it just stops. When I was done with it, it had stopped. You couldn't hear anything, complete silence. And it was like that for about 10 seconds. And then Dr. Greer said, okay, I think we're going to take a break. And then he came running over to me, and I'd never seen him and the guy's like 6'5". He's huge, and he came running over to me and he's just like, I want to know where you went. Where do you think that you went? This was real. He said, there's no way that, this actually happened to you. And he said, I want to know where you went. And like, he was so excited. He's like a little kid in a candy store. And I never see him like that because he's a very serious guy, he's very knowledgeable, very smart, and he's a big dude. But he is just so cute to see him like that, And and this is something that I really want to share for your listeners. This is very important. After he talked to me, then there was this lady standing there that walked over to me, and she was crying. And I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Will you please have lunch with me tomorrow?" And she's like, "Just please promise you have lunch with me." And I said, "Absolutely. I promise I'll have lunch with you tomorrow." So the next morning, which we did this till sometimes 2 in the morning. So breakfast was like 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. We go down, and it would basically be almost lunch, brunch, whatever. So there she is. She's waiting for me at the table. And why this is important, you'll find out really soon. Um, she sat me down and she said, I want to know your story. I want to know how you got here to this experience you had last night. And so I'm not going to go through it because I've already talked a lot about that. But I tell her all of it. And the big moment that I didn't even know was such a big thing was the surrender part of it that I told you about. The complete surrender and having no fear of death or anything, period. That's where I was. That's where I got to in order to come on this retreat. So then she starts crying. So, oh my God, what did I say? She said, no, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. That's why I'm crying, because it's so beautiful. She said, I need to tell you my story. And so what she tells me is she said that she came from extreme wealth. She never had to work a day in her life. And this lady was a bit older, so I mean, she might have been 60, something like that, I think. But um, she said that she's been meditating for over 30 years, 40 years. And she had been, because money was no object, she'd been to every single giant guru that you could think of in India, from Sadhguru to, and so she went to be trained by the best of the best in the world. And she said, after all those decades of doing this, she said, and going to all these gurus, she said, I never had an experience like you had, and I had to know why. She said, because they didn't teach her that she needed to completely surrender to the point of not having any fear of death and be willing to go. And it was like the most humbling feeling I've ever felt in my life. And the takeaway from that is that going back to the special part of it is that no one should ever have any doubt that they could do something like that or beyond, that they can't do what somebody else has done. No one should ever have any doubt. There's a movie called The Edge, and they get lost in the wilderness after their plane goes down. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but there's a point in it where they're being hunted by a bear. And the one guy is ready to give up. He just can't handle the stress of this. And the other guy is saying, no, we have to. We can't give up. We have to face this. And he says, what one man can do, another man can do. Because he said that he tells a story about this one guy who took out this bear, and it was either the bear or him. And he made a choice and he said, I have to take this bear out. It's him or me. And he said, he did it. What he did, we can do. What one man can do, another man can do. He said, repeat it over and over for me. And the guy repeated it. And they eventually, you can watch the movie, but it's called The Edge. But it's just like that. You don't have to be a guru. You don't have to have billions of dollars and go see gurus. You don't have to do that. If you can learn to really, really get good at it yourself and just let go. Meditation, to get really good at it, it's all about letting go, completely letting go. A lot of people don't like that because they want to be in control, but this is the opposite. This is the time. It's okay to have that. There's time for that. But when you're meditating, surrender is what it's all about. Trusting that there is this oneness, this source that's within you. We're the waves on top of the ocean, and we are the ocean, and that ocean is always there, ready to tap into. And so, you could be meditating for 5 months and probably, do something like that, maybe even less. So anyway, that was a beautiful part and I've never shared that publicly before. So.
What a story. Wow. I was not expecting that at all. And that is beautiful. Wow. Wow. Yeah. I'm still sort of stuck in all of the, visuals. What a story.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
No,
Amazing.
you're welcome.
Oh no, if I mean, you've obviously are a pretty clear channel and clearly you take it very seriously with your meditation and you're quite a master, obviously, in way of meditation. Do you offer assistance to anybody if they're looking to, kind of strengthen their meditation or learn more about it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what was interesting is that, after I shared this, then all of a sudden, I didn't talk much at all during the trip up to that point, and then I give them my experience. And so then people started coming up to me and asking me questions and asking me if I taught meditation and these things. And at the end, it was the last morning, and they're all telling me, you need to do this for a living. You need to quit selling real estate, and you need to, have retreats of your own and all this stuff. And you know what? I had to sit with this for a long time. And I decided at the time, not that I'll never say never, but at the time, I just never wanted to make money at the time. And so I've taught people meditation. I've taught people all kinds of things, and I've never charged a penny for it because doing it out of the goodness of my heart is so important. But the other thing that's so important to me is being genuine and credibility. And I just didn't want people thinking that I'm just trying to make money, and there's nothing wrong. We all have to, we're in this matrix. We're still in this matrix where we have to survive and we need money to survive. And it's not like that, but it was for me, just personally for me. Um, I've done it that way. And so, C5, I've never charged anybody anything. People come out for free. I train them. Um, going up to do Rama, Mission Rama. Anybody heard of that? You know, in Mount Shasta, that's another special thing that I've done almost every August since. So yeah, I would be happy to teach anybody. And I have it written down, and I can send, a special meditation that at least it works for me. Like I said, everybody's different, might not work for everybody, but and that's the big thing, is to not have an ego in this. There are people who they get really good at something in this spiritual world of yoga, happens a lot in yoga and modalities like that. And then they think that they get this ego, they build this ego. Well, that's actually the opposite of ascension. Because like you said, that's the root chakra. The ego and insecurity and fear is all intertwined into that lower chakra. And as you really rise up and try to open your chakras and rise up to the crown chakra and have that enlightenment that the Buddha had, then you become closer to the one. And you realize that you are really the one, just having a temporary subjective experience, that this avatar is not special, in that way. It's one of unlimited experiences. Because if we are the one, then I am you, you are me. We're the one is having your experience, the one is having my experience, the one is having my kid's experience, your kid's experience, everybody's experience. And then that gets into all kinds of stuff like, how do we feel about reincarnation? Are you just going back to becoming the one? Is that what I did? And when I found Astral Voyages, that book, and I was on a plane to Indonesia on a surf trip to Indonesia, by the way. And then, oh, well, oh, you kidding? Oh, cute. Um, and I almost screamed on the plane because I thought there was this little paragraph I finally found. It always talked about the 7 astral planes, and it talked about 8 to 11. And it said that very rarely anybody goes above 7, and that they, if ever, go to 11. But allegedly, it said that if you go all the way to 11, that's when your memory is completely wiped and you no longer exist. Your ego is wiped, and then you become love. You become the one, which is love. And so, actually, in frequencies, fear is the lowest frequency, love is the highest frequency, right? And so that's really where we're supposed to head towards. So yeah, so I try not to have any ego of it or anything. And that's why, I could always, there's a quote by Socrates: the wisest person knows how little they know. And there's another quote that's very similar: the more I learn, the more I realize how little I know. And so I try to remind myself of that every single day,
Yeah.
to humble. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Yeah, I'll have to share it with you probably a little bit offline, just because we're, for the
Yeah.
sake of time here, probably
Okay.
too. But what an amazing share. And I'll definitely, if you'd like me to, leave your contact information below, so that if folks do want to reach out to you,
Absolutely.
yeah, perfect. Well, oh my gosh, I mean, I could talk with you forever, Cam. I really enjoy.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about the new earth and freedom and abundance as one last little thing?
Yeah,
You
I
have
think
time?
we'll end today. Yeah, I'd like to
Oh, okay.
share, and then I'm even thinking that maybe this is a series at some point, and we'll have you continue on. But
Right.
yeah, exactly. That is, I really want to leave people just with, I'm always looking for solutions, and trying to be the solution really in lots of things in my life. And I wonder kind of what your viewpoint is. What do you think? How do you see the best way to create a new paradigm? Like the new earth, we're all talking about it. We all want a place of freedom. We all want that abundance. What are the next steps?
Well, it's pretty impossible to have that without the technology. And I talked about free energy technology. I spoke of the atomic replication printing technology. There's another technology that, in regards to all the cancer and everything that people are having, unfortunately, with so much sickness and health, illness, and so forth. And so there's a thing called med beds, and med beds, I think, works very similarly to Dr. Raymond Royal Rife, from back in 1934. And he was actually here in San Diego. He was an amazing genius of a scientist. And he figured out how to cure stage 4 cancer using frequencies. And finding out the frequency, he would grow tumors, and then he would take a little sample of the tumor, and then he would try all these different frequencies on that little sample of that tumor. And every single different cancer cell has a different frequency. And when you amplify it, it's like an opera singer with a high C, and then you see the champagne flute going like this, and then blows up. That's exactly what he was doing with cancer cells. But then he realized he could do that with parasites, and you could do that with all these other bad things in our bodies. And it's a whole massive list of things. And now, by the way, for your viewers, the technology has come back. They tried to get rid of the technology, of course, the FDA and all that stuff, but back then. But it's called Spooky 2 is the name of the company. It's actually Spooky and the number 2. And you can buy a Rife machine, Dr. Royal Rife machine. They call it a Rife machine. Spooky 2 is the name of the company. And they have a list of frequencies. You go on their website, and I mean, just look at the list. I mean, it's just monstrous of all the different things that they have the exact frequencies of, that you just use these machines to amplify. I'm going to buy one, by the way. And you use these machines, and I think the highest, most expensive machine, I think, is $6,000-$7,000. But you can get one that's a little bit lower scale, maybe for $500 or $800. But anyway, there's MedBed technology. They did this in a movie with Matt Damon, where it's a futuristic movie where this little girl has cancer, and they need to get to this space station where they have these med beds, and they put her in the med bed, and within seconds she's healed of her cancer, and she was about to die. And that's the type of technology. So that means no more illness. You have alchemy technology that would get rid of our pollution in our air and our water and our soil, everything, like almost instantaneously once it's created. The free energy technology gets rid of the grid. It gets rid of all energy. I mean, we're talking even solar, wind, because you don't need any of that. You have a little box, like I said, or your phone. You never run out of energy. And then imagine in Africa, in India, Asia. I mean, all these places that are third world countries that don't have a pot to piss in practically, and they seriously don't have indoor plumbing. We could create. I've coined it. Well, I don't want to put this out there, but you could call it whatever you want. But we're going to create a new Earth with this type of technology, because we're going to hit the 100th monkey tipping point. Like I said, and then everybody who has the secrets, once we hit the 100th monkey tipping point, is going to come out. All the secrets are going to come out. We'll have full disclosure. Everybody's going to know this stuff. Everybody's going to know how to create this technology. The technology is going to be created, and it's just going to happen practically overnight like that. It can. And they already have this technology in Lockheed Skunk Works. Lockheed Skunk Works figured out free energy devices technology in October of 1954. There was a classified document that was leaked. And they figured out anti-gravity, which they call electrogravitic technology, which is basically we should have flying saucers. We shouldn't be in cars. And that was figured out in October of 1954. That's how long they've been keeping this from us. There's an Invention Secrecy Act of 1951 that they've had, where they've collected over 5,400 technologies that could have made humanity and human civilization, an amazing, place with complete abundance. So no one would have to work. You could just do what you're passionate about. If you like to do certain things, you like to whittle, you like to paint, you like to sculpt, you like to, teach yoga, you could still do all those things. You just don't have to worry about bills. You don't have to worry about taxes. You don't have none of that. There wouldn't be a monetary system. You think extraterrestrials with 500 to 1,000 IQs that are coming here have a monetary system of debt? No. Absolutely not. They could create things out of thin air, and it would be like having something in your house, and people would just share on the internet, say, okay, here's the atomic blueprint for a new shoe. My girlfriend likes shoes. So here's atomic blueprint for a new shoe. Okay. And then it's out there. It's like, oh, I like that shoe. Okay. And then bzz, it's made. Food, of course, you can have food created. Anything that you have the atomic blueprint of would be created in this device. So then we wouldn't have to kill animals to eat food. We wouldn't have to dig in the earth, like I had mentioned before. Um, and then we get into a whole like hard to wrap our minds around area where we could have buildings that levitate because we have gravity control technology. And therefore, then we can let the earth grow back to the way it was again. There wouldn't be any parking lots. There wouldn't be any malls or, these places. Everything could be just levitating above the earth. And we could, go down and, go for a bike ride or something, but we would, limit, what we would do as far as I don't like to say carbon, that whole thing, but our footprint really, so that the animals and everything could flourish, and then we could go to other planets, and we could travel space and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that I wanted to get that in there because that's where I wanted to ascend to that crescendo. I mean, that you have to know what the matrix is in order to be able to exit the matrix. And once people start waking up, the best thing you can do is spread this information, doing exactly what you're doing, spreading this knowledge, spreading this information. That is what's awakening people. And the less that they're afraid to talk about it or think about it, then the more people are going to start talking about it and thinking about it. Okay. It's like, I mean, I'm going to bring this up just because everybody knows about it. It's like Weinstein. It's like everybody wants to be first to be second. And I got that from Dr. Stephen Greer. Nobody wants to stick their neck out and take the risk. But once that first person does, once that first extremely brave woman came out against Weinstein, look what happened. All of a sudden, open the floodgates. Look what happened with Epstein, open the floodgates. As soon as people started coming out and that first person stuck their neck out, then once it becomes more acceptable, then people aren't afraid anymore. They're not afraid of what people think of them. And that's going away. Being afraid of what people think about you, that's one of the most exciting things ever, is that that's starting to go away. And when people can come and talk about these things and think about these things and share these things, then it's just going to be an absolute explosion. We're going to hit that 100th monkey tipping point in like no time.
I
So
think I think we're getting close, and I am going to dream that dream with you, Cam. I am dreaming with you for sure.
wonderful.
Yeah. Oh,
Thank you.
it has been such a pleasure. You're just, yeah, you're amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
I
you for having me.
appreciate you. To all the viewers, if you guys like today's show, I will encourage you to please like and subscribe. It is you guys that help to keep bringing this information forward. And I very much do appreciate all of you as well so much. So, on that, namaste, brother. Thank you again for being here. And we will leave whatever information needs to be left in the description box below. Have a wonderful night, everyone. Take care.
Okay.